This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. I'm Evan Jansen. The show, of course, live broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, we're also streaming live on YouTube right now, where the whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel now. Today, road rage. All too familiar, it seems. It could have a physical cause, with experts talking about the rise of intermittent explosive disorder. We'll talk about that at length shortly. Also, we'll chat to the Education Department about the latest incidents of racism and bullying caught on camera at schools here in South Africa. Should police using excessive force be classified as human rights abuses? What do you think? We'll close the show today with an update from Zimbabwe, where the Zim dollar goes out of circulation today. But first, let's get the day's news from Anindo Mal.
Good morning, I'm Anindo Mal. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. A suspect of the so-called airport robbery gang is being treated at an undisclosed hospital and will appear in court soon. This after a dramatic shootout with the police in Pretoria. 2 other male suspects were killed in the shootout with police last night. All 3 suspects are believed to be part of a syndicate that targets people traveling from OR Tambo International Airport.
What had happened was our members from the National Investigation Unit received intelligence there's going to be an armed robbery in this particular area, and by robbers that actually hijacked a vehicle earlier this month in the Boshoff area in Pretoria East, and they spotted the vehicle at this house, and at that particular time the robbery was taking place. Then this team contacted backup, and when in trying to engage the robbers, the shootout ensued.
Today, closing arguments from various legal teams will be presented to the SABC Commission into the controversial multi-billion rand arms deal. This comes after 3 years of public hearings held in Pretoria. Commission Chair Judge Billy Sariti will make a final statement on Friday, which will officially conclude the hearings. A man alleged to be the driver of the car that crashed into the vehicle of top-billing presenter Simba Mhere is set to be back in court. Preshalan Naidu made his first appearance for culpable homicide in the Randburg Magistrates Court earlier this month. Mhere was driving along William Nicol Drive, north of Johannesburg, when a vehicle crashed into him. Both he and friend Katie Shea O'Brien were killed. The DA will request a full investigation by the Public Protector into President Omar al-Bashir's departure from South Africa. DA leader Musi Maimane wants Thuli Madonsela to investigate who was responsible for the use of state resources to allow the Sudanese president to leave the country. Al-Bashir slipped out of South Africa while attending an African Union summit in Sandton. This despite a High Court ruling that he should be arrested for war crimes. A parliamentary debate on the government's apparent cooperation in facilitating al-Bashir's departure will take place tomorrow. The Cuban Five have thanked South Africa for being part of the international solidarity campaign for their release from prison. The 5 men spent more than a decade in an American prison for espionage. They were released last year following unrelenting international pressure, including by the South African government. The Tripartite Alliance has welcomed their release as a first step to finally liberate Cuba from economic sanctions led by the USA.
Their presence here is about celebrating their release in the first place, and I appreciate that. That is the power of international solidarity that the Cuban people has given to all of us. And secondly, talks to establish diplomatic relations between the US and Cuba is underway. Very good step. Removal of Cuba from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism is a step to the right direction.
And in sports, 21-year-old Jordan Spieth is the 150th US Open champion. This is the second major title for the Masters champion after his one-shot victory over fellow American Dustin Johnson and South Africa's Louis Oosthuizen. Another South African, Brandon Grace, has been in contention, but a double bogey at the 16th crashed his victory hopes. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Thank you, Annette. Now, unwarranted blow-ups on our roads often make the news these days. We've seen many videos of motorists in a fit of rage and some videos of some even resorting to violence that go viral online. There could, however, be more to a driver just having an angry outburst on the road. Intermittent explosive disorder involves repeated episodes of impulsive, aggressive, violent behavior or angry verbal outbursts in which one reacts grossly out of proportion to a situation. But before we talk a little bit more about this, just to show you how prevalent it is, the following clip was an incident that took place last week on Ontdekker's Drive here in Johannesburg in Roodepoort, filmed on his way to work by one of our producers, Calvin Mapuza. Take a look, it's all too familiar. As you can see, two men coming to blows in the middle of peak hour traffic in the morning. It's a very familiar scene that seems to play itself out almost daily on our roads. That clip was taken only a couple of days ago on Ontdekker's Drive in Roodepoort by one of our producers on his way to work. I've seen it in the traffic myself. Now, this could typically be an example of a motorist suffering from intermittent explosive disorder. But to tell us a little bit more, we are joined via Skype by psychologist Dr. Jacques van Zyl. Dr. van Zyl, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Huge pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. van Zyl, intermittent explosive disorder. What exactly are we talking about? Looking at the video, is this a case in point?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, if you just start with the definition of rage itself, which is a complete loss of control in a particular situation where the person will only come to calmness or the rage will only dissipate once it's been expended, either physically or verbally. Now, that kind of person is the kind of person that we are beginning to diagnose with the IED diagnosis, which means that you get like about 2% of your population that'll suffer because of chemical imbalance in the brain, that when they are confronted with a barrier of some sort, in this case, in terms of usage of the road, they will absolutely lose control completely.
The study by the University of Chicago talks about high levels of inflammation in people who lose it like that on the road. How do you view that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we're still waiting for some more research to come in because it's very difficult to assess that. You can only assess the overt behavior that you observe and from there categorize or diagnose that particular person. But that there is a definite physical issue in brain imbalance is a fact.
What are the factors you think that could lead to one having IED, and how should an individual manage that if you think you have it?
Yes. Look, if you speak to people who are, let's say, family members of people that suffer from that, they will tell you that it's something that starts even in early childhood. And I'm not talking about your typical temper tantrums that most kids get. But you're talking here about, let's say, a 12 or 13-year-old already that is showing signs of losing control in certain situations, acting out angrily and so on towards parents, teachers, and so on. And when they go into young adulthood, it sort of gets more exacerbated because more life pressures are being piled on. So it is not something that just starts happening at a particular age. It's got a very long history usually. And people like that believe they suffer from that, should seek professional help because apart from the psychotherapy interventions, there are also medication that people can take for this.
Are we doing enough to deal with this? Do you think there's enough campaigns around to let people know that, it's not just a fit of rage in the traffic, there could be underlying circumstances, and we should maybe have campaigns to talk to this?
I couldn't agree with you more. We are not really doing a lot. I think What we do is we pick up these incidents and it goes viral on YouTube and so on, and there's a bit of dust being kicked up, but there's no institution that takes, let's say, the accountability or responsibility to handle this as a mental disorder and give the public information as to what it is and where they should go to. We just simply don't do that. In fact, if you look at road behavior in general, not even in the education system, where let's say with grade 11s and 12s that are going on to do their student licenses, their learner licenses and so on, there is nothing on behavior, there's nothing on road usage at all.
The individual, what advice would you give to the individual if they believe they have a problem, or even if they don't think they're suffering from IED?
Look, you know, as I said previously, I would advise people to seek professional help. Maybe start off with a psychologist, a mental health professional, because not everybody that has these temper outbursts suffer from the so-called IED. There might be other life stressors, causative factors that might generate, you know, that high level of stress, and perhaps somebody in the field of mental health can assist. But families, usually what they do is they make it a very open secret. Nobody talks about it. Nobody confronts the person, and I'm talking about a friendly confrontation to make them aware of the issue. They rather avoid it, and that's part of the problem.
Doctor, I thank you for joining us today. That's psychologist Dr. Jacques Van Zyl. We're talking about road rage this morning. Intermittent explosive disorder. Yes, you could be suffering from that if you lose your cool disproportionately rather in the traffic, even at home. It's not too late to get help. We can all get help in dealing with road rage. But let's take this discussion a little bit further. We're now joined from Pretoria by the Automobile Association spokesperson, Leighton Beard. A very good morning to you, Leighton. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Yevon. Good to be here.
It's tough to say road rage incidents are on the rise, since it's not something that's being documented properly, really, in South Africa or elsewhere. What's the view that you guys at the AA hold with regards to the statistics and whether road rage or general anger incidents on the road are on the rise?
Yes, I think you're correct, Yevon. I mean, the first problem that we have is that there aren't any reliable statistics. What we find is that there are incidents that occur. If you have a look, about a year ago, there was an incident where a man got out of his car, went to another driver, took his keys out the car, threw them in the bush. There was an altercation between the two of them. There was an incident a couple of weeks back in Bonero Park. So we rely quite heavily on social media, people who are filming these types of events, like your producer did on his way into work last week. Those are the types of incidents that we know about because they've been publicized on social media. Some of the mainstream media obviously pick up on that, and then, you know, it gets kind of national attention. But reliable statistics in terms of how many incidents occur in a specific time, those types of statistics we don't have. In terms of dealing with it, I think one of the things, and this is coming from what Dr. Fasaki said as well, Yevon, is drivers, motorists, I don't think are thinking of the consequences of their actions when they get out of a car and want to confront another driver. Yeah. And for us, that really is the big message. Think of the consequences of your actions if you were to stop, if you were to get out of your car, and if you were to go to another driver. And what we advise people and what we say to people in our press releases, on our social media when we are dealing with this type of issue, is always consider the consequences. The 5 seconds it takes for you to get angry in your car in that situation will be over in 10 or 15 seconds. But if you get out of your car and you confront another driver, that could have a life-changing effect. That could mean you are going to be arrested. Or worse, it could mean somebody is going to die in that incident. Somebody could shoot you. You could shoot somebody else. The incident in Bonero Park is very interesting because there we have a situation where a motorist has his children in the car with him, and this has now gone over to a very violent act where somebody has died, and that motorist has now been arrested. And what we've really got to ask ourselves as motorists is is it really worth it? Was that incident really that severe that I needed to get out of my car, take out a gun, commit a crime? Is that going to solve the problem? And what we are saying as the Automobile Association is no. Think of the consequences, let it go, and move on from there.
As the AA, what is the sense that you guys have of what's happening on the roads in South Africa? Should we be alarmed?
I don't think we should be alarmed, Yabin, at the moment. I mean, in terms of road rage, certainly we shouldn't be alarmed. I think incidents of road rage obviously vary. You might get a situation where somebody's going to start shouting or showing some hand signals to a driver next to them, and everybody moves on and it's over. With the advent of social media, obviously, some of the more serious types of incidents are getting a lot more airtime, are getting a lot more play. So you are hearing more about it as people, take videos with their cell phones, take pictures of this stuff, post it to Facebook and to Instagram and to YouTube. So you are seeing more of that. Does that necessarily mean that there's an increase in these incidents, or does it mean that we are just documenting them better now than we did maybe 5 or 10 years ago? So I don't think it's a case of it's getting out of control. Again, what we advise everybody to do is be calm. Take your time. Let it go. Everybody in traffic at some point is going to make a minor mistake. We find really, these types of incidents happen around traffic circles and around stop streets and around, traffic lights, where people maybe feel, that guy didn't stop and, he went and it was my turn, and, how dare he do that? And, I'm going to take this kind of law, I'm going to take the law into my own hands. And, who is this person to actually, is he better than me? Is he in more of a hurry than I am? Everybody's got pressures. So it's a question of just saying, you know what? Everybody makes a mistake. We calm down. Nobody panics. It's going to be over in 5 or 10 seconds, and we move on from there. Unfortunately, what people do is they don't consider the consequences, and they want immediate action. So they get out of their car, and something that could have been dealt with, as I said earlier, in 20 seconds now becomes something that requires police intervention, requires you to go to court. Your children are affected. Our message is very clear, Ibn. Always think of the consequences. Is this incident worth being taken into custody for? Is it worth you getting this upset over? And 99% of the time, it isn't. So move on and be calm. That's our message.
In this, we've got the video playing now, right on screen now. There's even a third party getting involved, parked his car there in front and is getting involved with it. What's your advice to people in general who act like this, who get out and want to get involved in these kind of incidents?
Yeah, it's a difficult call because I think, we would always advise people, calm a situation down. And if your involvement is actually going to make that situation worse, it's very difficult to say, obviously. But, you might find good Samaritans who stop next to these types of incidents, who want to just diffuse the situation. It may be that they become involved in it themselves. Very often you find in a situation like this, people don't want anything to develop into something more severe. So they want to kind of calm the situation down, which is great. Unfortunately, you may find that those people actually become involved in the situation as well. It's a very difficult thing for us to advise on, Eben. And, if at all, what we would advise people to do is, if they feel that there's a situation that's getting out of hand, contact the JMPD, contact the TMPD, contact the traffic police, contact the police, see if there are other law enforcement officers that are available to assist you. But, by and large, if you get involved, you run the risk of actually becoming involved in that incident, which is also something that you don't want.
And it could be a life-changing event. Leighton, thank you
could be a life-changing event.
Thank you for coming through and making it very clear to us. That's Leighton Beard, who's the spokesperson for the Automobile Association here in South Africa. We're talking about road rage. And really, it's a simple thing. If you are suffering from IED, intermittent explosive disorder, then you should go and seek help. More than 3% of people in general in every population suffer from this, and it forces you to lose it a little bit. If you don't suffer from this condition, then the AA says, don't sweat the small stuff. It's as simple as that. Don't change your life or the lives of your family members for a moment of anger in the traffic. Anyhow, we move on. 5 former Cuban intelligence officers, informally named the Cuban 5, arrived in Johannesburg yesterday morning for a visit expressing their gratitude for the support during their imprisonment in the United States. Now, let's take a look at what you've been saying about this on social media. Lots of varying views. Kalanga Matebula says, I'm trying to comprehend what exactly makes Cuban 5 heroes. Please help. If you don't understand that, then you maybe should do a bit of contextual reading. Zake says, the warm welcoming Cuban 5 in our land is another strong message to the Western bullies. Zakes, that's what it's about. Nazola Ndamase says, the Cubans help us even though we work with the country that suffocates them, the US. They don't choose friends for those they help, says Lazola. And then Salga Never Loved Us says, Samuel welcomes the Cuban 5 to South Africa, calls for an end to the illegal trade embargo imposed by the US. International solidarity. And then Spoo says, South Africa loves the Cuban 5, South Africa loves Russia, South Africa loves Palestine, South Africa loves freedom, South Africa loves human rights, boo. That's who we are. We are the moral compass of the world, and we all have to live up to that legacy. The legacy of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. We are his people. Let's take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. Start in Europe. The Times there reports that a reduction in stop-and-search checks on teenagers is contributing to a dramatic rise in stabbings, the country's most senior police officers said. We move to the United Kingdom. The Daily Telegraph. The European Union welcomed new proposals from Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras as a good basis for progress. Talks where creditors want 11th-hour concessions to haul Athens back from the brink of bankruptcy today. And down under in Australia, the Daily Telegraph talks about Jordan Spieth, who's won the US Open, triumphing by one shot over Dustin Johnson to claim his second major tournament victory in a row. Of course, down under, the Australians won't say that a South African was tied for second place. Today's tweet pick of the day comes from ABS-CBN News Channel, captioned, tens of thousands join a yoga session in India on International Yoga Day. That was of yesterday. What a fantastic picture that is. The triumph of the human spirit, it is. Back here in South Africa, let's have a quick look at what's happening in our country. We start in Gauteng, Johannesburg to be exact, where a man alleged to be the driver of the car that crashed into the vehicle of top billing presenter Simba Mere is set to appear in the Randburg Magistrates Court. 21-year-old Preshalan Naidu made his first appearance for culpable homicide earlier this month, and his trial is set to start in August of this year. Still in the city of gold, Johannesburg, the murder trial of 4 people accused of killing Mozambican national Emmanuel Sitole is expected to begin in the Alexandra Magistrates Court. And in Durban, on the East Coast, a suspected serial rapist who's been terrorizing communities around Empangeni for the past 3 months is expected to appear in the Empangeni Magistrates Court today. The 35-year-old man is linked to the rapes of at least 5 women. That's what's on here in South Africa. As you saw right over there, it's gone now. Time for us to take a short break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
I know a better route. Incoming. Watch out. Let's brighten it up a little. I can handle this. Engineered intuition. The new Audi A6.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m., then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Now, there's been a lot of controversy over the latest alleged racial incident that occurred at the Kuro private school in Roodeplaat, Pretoria North, after a video suggesting that the children were separated on buses according to race. This went viral last week, but it's not the first time the school has come under the spotlight for this type of thing. In January of this year, the same school was found guilty of implementing racial segregation in classes. Yesterday, Sunday Papers reported that Gauteng Education MEC Panyaza Lesufi will meet with the school's board of directors, after which he's expected to announce his final decision on whether or not the school should be closed. But racial incidents are not the only problems in our schools at the moment. Bullying is very prevalent, and we've seen videos to this effect as well. We'll look at that a little bit later. But joining us in studio is the Department of Basic Education spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga. Elijah, that long title is now gone, no?
It's not me, it's your colleagues.
Now, I wanted to ask you about, on a serious point, the Kuro private school is under the spotlight once again. Give us an idea how the department views this, and then also how you're going to handle this incident going forward.
Well, the events that have been reported coming from Kuro are such that we feel as a department that we are concerned by them, and that type of story should not be allowed. That type of conduct, particularly in school, should not be allowed to thrive, because we shouldn't be teaching our children segregation. We come from a painful past. We shouldn't be going back there. We should be working towards social harmony, social cohesion, understanding that we are diverse people that need to live together. So what has been reported coming from Kuro in the past few months, including the recent events, are contrary to the beliefs that we have as a department, are contrary to the values that we want to instill in our children in all our schools. So we are going to do something about it.
This kind of video caused a lot of consternation, the one that you see on screen playing now. There's talk about the school being closed down, legal action from parents. What does the next week hold for you, and then how do you view this closing down of the school?
Well, there are different options. The one is to talk to the school, because that's the first place where we need to start. We need to talk to the school, find out exactly what happened, because what you see on that video might not necessarily be the correct picture. So what we need to do is to follow due process, which means interrogating that video. We are seeing only one part of it. We need to see the entire video, interview the people that are concerned, find out from parents how they feel about this, especially because this is the second incident in as many months. But one of the things that we are doing as well is to meet the stakeholders that are involved in the school. I'm saying stakeholders because it's not just the parents or even the school board that are involved. There are shareholders in that school, and it has come to our attention that government, through some entity, is also a shareholder in the company that owns the school. So we need to engage everyone. But one of the things that the MEC can do is to review the license conditions of the school. And I think that is what he's talking about. But even before he gets to that point, he will have had conversations with the people that are involved.
The way forward, because it almost looks like we need to come up with a plan as to how we're going to integrate children from different backgrounds and language backgrounds, especially as this has now become the escape clause almost in a way. What do you as the department see as a sort of way forward? Is it communication or is it about implementing?
We need a national conversation on this matter. We feel that we need to broaden it to other parts of the country, because we are getting to know about what is happening at Kuro Roodeplaat, but the same could be happening elsewhere in the country. So we need to have a national indaba where we look at this and say, how do we bring up our children in a way that they will become different citizens, better citizens to what we have seen in the past. That's why, even as a department, we are saying that all the African languages must be taught in schools, because we want all these children growing up to have some knowledge of one or two African languages. And all of that is part and parcel of bringing this social cohesion and social harmony that we're talking about. But we really need to make sure that everyone that is involved in the education system, even those that are outside the education system but have an interest in what we are doing, should come forward and let's talk about this to raise awareness so that more people can be aware of what we need to achieve.
Going forward, how do you plan on monitoring this and keeping tabs on this kind of behavior?
Well, we depend on communities, like people that have done what we are seeing there, the videos, you know, whatever can be done to raise alarm where such is taking place. We need to really encourage people to come forward and do that. But we need to ask ourselves as citizens to say, what is it that we want for this country? What type of people do we want to be? Do we want to be known for this, or do we want to be known as peaceful people? So we really need to focus on that and build a better country that is united. We are diverse. We need to acknowledge that, but at the same time, we need to live side by side in harmony. We
need to celebrate that. It's as simple as that. I want to move on now and talk about the other scenario that came out last week. Must have come to your attention again. It's about bullying, and in the incident now, this video has been removed off all social media sites already. There we go. There we see some of the pictures with the teacher sitting quietly in the background reading his newspaper while this is going on.
You know, when I first saw the video and I then got told that a teacher was there watching this, I was shocked. But, you know, it was something else when we heard that the teacher had been involved in a similar incident. I mean, you just left speechless. You don't know what else to say. If the teacher wasn't there, then it would be a different story, because we'd then say the learners must be taken to task. But if this type of behavior is happening in the presence of a teacher, it means that there's something definitely wrong, not only with that teacher or those learners, but with that community there for this type of thing to take place. Because we really need to take back our schools, we need to take back our streets. We need to make sure that we talk to our children and make sure that they understand that violence is not an option when it comes to resolving problems. But when a teacher is there, the person who's supposed to be teaching them values, how to respect each other, live together, it's shocking. But we are definitely going to take action. I mean, I think that teacher has already been suspended. And I personally don't believe that the teacher should remain in our system. In fact, something must happen to help that teacher, because there's something that might be wrong with that person as well.
What about bullying in general? You know, if you read the social media sites and if you read some newspapers, there's a sense that bullying is very much prevalent in our schools. I wouldn't say on the rise, because I think it's always been bullying in our schools. But do you, as the department, do you see this as a red flag that bullying is becoming problematic in our schools?
Yeah, bullying has always been a problem. I mean, a study done in 2013 showed that 57.6 children surveyed indicated that they had been bullied in school in some way. That number is very high. It's very shocking. But what we need to do as parents, we need to take steps to address it. If your child reports that they were bullied, you need to take steps immediately, go to the school, find out who did this. And if there's violence, it must be reported to the police as well, not only to the school, so that the parents of the perpetrator can also be brought on board. I'm saying this because in most situations we find that parents are not involved in the lives of their children. Not necessarily that they are not there physically, they are there, but they are not engaging emotionally with their children. They are not connected. So the children feel there's no one to guide them. And that's one thing that we really need to do. We need to take parenting seriously and do it ourselves, and not leave it to television and other games that we let our children play.
The same interventions that we should have with our children's schoolwork, the way that when they study, you know, all the way to matric, we shouldn't just say, oh, matric results are down, it's the department's fault. We have to be active in our children's lives. Before you go, just give a word of advice to those children that are being bullied, because very often we don't really look at the children, we look at this thing almost out of context. What should kids do?
Report. You know, the statistics that we've seen, they show that about 52.8% of the children, they report to their parents. But it seems parents are not acting because they think it's just one of those things that children will complain about. That's why I'm saying, as soon as your child reports, you must make your way to the school, find out what happened, engage the teachers as well, so that the other children that are involved must know that if you bully a child, you will be brought to be disciplined, and the principal will know about it and will be dealt with. So it's really about that report as quickly as possible, and those that are involved, your parents, guardians, must also take action to address it.
And follow the official channels if you're parents. Don't go to the school and try and grab the bully out of line and serve your own kind of justice, which we also see.
Of course, that's why we find some of the learners stabbing each other and ending in death, unfortunately. Those are the type of things that we must avoid, because once a child feels they need to take the law into their own hands, it means they didn't get help somewhere. So we need to help them, engage them, talk to them, how was school today, and from that conversation you will pick up if there were issues that need addressing. So we really need to talk to our children, but also attend meetings at school governing bodies, because some of these things are dealt with at that level, but parents are not there to listen and make their input on what can be done.
Elijah, thank you very much. Always great to have you with us in studio. That's the spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education. Says, attend your school governing body functions, be present in your child's life and in their schooling. That's the only way to make sure that your child doesn't become a victim or even a bully themselves in this case. Thank you, Elijah. Thanks for joining us. Now, the historic Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, where 9 people were shot dead, reopened its doors early yesterday on Sunday, with thousands lining up to attend an emotional service less than a week after a shocking massacre there in Charleston. But here are some of your comments. This is what you've been saying about it. It's been a very emotional issue. Suja says, Rabani says, when you see actions of kids like Dylan Roof and others who joined IS based out of West, makes you wonder if extremism belongs to any religion. No, you get extremists everywhere in our society. Zap You says, but learning that the Philadelphia shooting was a domestic fight changed its political possibilities to just a sad tragedy. No, it's not a sad tragedy. It's a race issue. Harriet Vincent says, don't care who the shooters were. What I want to know is why no one is putting the Detroit shooting or Philadelphia shooting on full blast. Ask Harriet. Life Meet Unbreakable says, 11th-month-old shot in the neck. Hashtag Philadelphia shooting. Wow. That is simply scary. Anyhow, let's have a look at what's on our Newsroom Facebook page today. Recent boasts by the National and Provincial Health Department at the South African AIDS Conference that was held in Durban spoke about how condoms were successfully being distributed. However, the distribution figures may include thousands of condoms that have been dumped. Then, Nigeria's new president, that is, Muhammadu Buhari, has been advised to end a fuel subsidy program and privatize Nigeria's 4 refineries. And Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan yesterday cited instability among neighboring states to urge political parties to form a coalition government quickly or face the prospect of holding yet another election. For more news and updates, you can go to SABC Newsroom on Facebook in the search bar at the top, or you can go to sabc.co.za/news. That's where all the breaking news happens all of the time. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. We'll be back with you shortly. SABC News seeks to be the biggest, the most extensive and diverse news organization on the continent. Our mission is to provide accurate and credible news and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are committed to covering every part of the continent. We reflect the world to Africa and Africa to the world. SABC News, Africa's news leader. Now available throughout the continent.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. A suspect of the so-called airport robbery gang is being treated at an undisclosed hospital and will appear in court soon. This after a dramatic shootout with the police in Pretoria. 2 other male suspects were killed in the shootout with police last night. All 3 suspects are believed to be part of a syndicate that targets people travelling from OR Tambo International Airport. Today, closing arguments from various legal teams will be presented to the Suriti Commission into the controversial multi-billion rand arms deal. This comes after 3 years of public hearings held in Pretoria. Commission Chair Judge Billy Suriti will make a final statement on Friday, which will officially conclude the hearings. And a man alleged to be the driver of the car that crashed into the vehicle of top-billing presenter Simba Mpere is said to be back in court. Mpere was killed in a crash earlier this year while driving along William Nicol Drive, north of Johannesburg. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, back to you.
Thank you very much, Janine. Now, as from today, the Zimbabwean government will formally take its Zimbabwean dollar out of circulation. The Zimbabwean dollar will now be replaced with the US dollar as the main currency of use in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe started using foreign currencies like the US dollar and the South African rand in 2009 after the Zimbabwean dollar was ruined by hyperinflation, which hit 5 billion % in 2008. Zimbabweans have until September to turn in their old banknotes, which some people are even selling as souvenirs to tourists. Now, to tell us more, we're joined on the line by our correspondent, not on the line, via Skype by our correspondent in Zimbabwe, Shingai Nyoka. Very good morning to you, Shingai. Great to have you with us.
Good morning to you, Eben.
Shingai, tell us about this decision that Zimbabwe has now decided to demonetize the Zim dollar, and how can people get their Zim dollars converted now?
Well, even this has been a process that many people had been waiting for since 2009, when effectively the Zimbabwean dollar was no longer in use. People simply abandoned it when the United States dollar, as well as the South African rand and the British pound, were introduced. So many people were holding on to those Zimbabwe dollars. Many of them actually threw them away because they thought that this process of demonetization wouldn't take place. But since last year, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has been saying that in a move that they believe will boost confidence among investors, among the Zimbabwean population, that they will move to officially bury the Zimbabwe dollar. That means that it will not come back into circulation anytime soon. This process of demonetization actually started last week, where people were able to take the $100 trillion notes to the bank and receive money for them.
Now, Shingai, you mentioned the $100 trillion notes. I saw that they've been selling like hotcakes on eBay for quite a few rand. Is there a bit of trade now in people trying to hang on to these iconic banknotes?
Well, a lot of people were not aware that they were so popular with tourists. Many people had just been holding on to them and had gone to the bank when the Reserve Bank announced that they'd be buying back this money. But many people are likely to keep holding on to that, to the $100 trillion note in particular, because at the bank they're only selling or only being bought for 40 US cents. You mentioned that they're very popular among tourists. That particular note would sell to tourists for $30 US and also on eBay. But many people are saying that, you know what, this is just, we want to break with the past. We don't want to remember where we came from, and we're looking forward. And they really are not interested in either selling these notes to the tourist or even handing them in to the Reserve Bank. The response has been very low since the process started last Monday.
And the reaction of the locals in Zimbabwe, are they feeling sad that the Zim dollar is no more?
I think there's a lot of relief from people. There's been a lot of suspicion against government about their intentions. You'll know that the Reserve Bank recently introduced what they call bond coins to ease the shortage of change. And to many people, this appeared to be a ruse on the part of government to reintroduce the Zimbabwe dollar. So to a lot of people, this essentially is a confirmation that the Zimbabwe government will not be bringing back the Zimbabwe dollar anytime soon. And it is instilling a bit more confidence in the economy, as well as hopefully among investors who know that when they lend to Zimbabwean companies in US dollars 4 or 5 years down the line, they will still be repaid in US dollars.
Moving on, Shingai, another issue that's causing a bit of a stir there is that street vendors have been given the rest of the week to move out of the CBD. It's causing quite a bit of consternation, isn't it?
Absolutely, especially when you consider the fact that there are about 100,000 vendors that are out on the streets in Harare alone. They've literally taken over the pavements and are causing a lot of consternation, not just with the city council, but also with legitimate shop owners who say that they're having business is being taken away from them. Now, government has given them up until Friday to move off the streets into designated areas. But from what we understand, the vendors have secured a court ruling to be able to march to Parliament the day before that on Thursday. They're protesting the way that this has been done. They say that they want to ensure that the designated sites have the proper facilities, that they're also along lucrative routes. Otherwise, they will not move to those places. So really, by the end of the week, we'll know what is going to happen to these vendors. But really at this time, there's a lot of resistance, or the city council is facing a lot of resistance to clean up the streets of Zimbabwe, of Harare.
No, it's not only the street vendors that are being targeted. It's called Operation Drive Out Rubbish or Restore Order. It's also set to look at cleaning up the slums across the country. Is that right?
At this point, there hasn't really been any confirmation about that. There's just been speculation. But at this point, the City Council appears to firstly want to target the street vendors. This is a problem, as you can imagine, given the downturn in the economy, which has affected not only the Harare CBD, but just the country as a whole, that people feel that because of where the economy is, they're justified to do whatever they want, and the government should understand because they are just trying to make money. So from what we understand, the first port of call will be to deal with the vendors issue, and that's likely to happen on Friday.
Shingai, thank you for joining us today. Very first time on Skype live from Harare in Zimbabwe. That is Shingai Nyoka. Thank you very much for giving us an update, not just on the Zim dollar that's going out of circulation today, but also street vendors have been told to get out of the city. The government there wants to clean up the streets. Interesting. Let's hope there are no clashes a little bit later in the week between authorities and vendors and the like. Anyhow, finally, we'll take a look at something very close to my heart, golf. America's Jordan Spieth added the US Open title to his Masters victory after a thrilling climax at Chambers Bay in Washington State. Here are some of your comments on it. My son was very happy that Jordan Spieth won because his name is Jordan. I, of course, wanted one of the South Africans to win. Anyhow, Sam Lianza says, if you think golf is boring, you didn't see the last 3 holes of play today. Hashtag US Open. Yes, there was a double bogey in there for Brandon Grace, which cost him the tournament. Will Costin says, always good waking up to a good win. Well, in Jordan Spieth, that kid's won me a fortune this year. Ah, you are a betting man then. Awesome Sports Logos says, in January, Under Armour negotiated a new 10-year deal with Jordan Spieth, whose original deal was set to expire in 2016. Brilliant move. Yes, it was a brilliant move indeed. I'm sure it runs into more than $100 million US. Anyhow, Matthew Beardsley talks about sign of a great player when you're able to win without your A game. Yes, that's what the great champions do, isn't it? David Tibbett says, Jordan Spieth, congrats on winning your second major in a row, it should say, David Tibbett. And the young man is talking about winning all 4 majors this year. Hasn't been done in more than 60 or 70 years, I think. Should be very, very interesting how it goes at the British Open, though, in just under a month's time. this year. Should be very interesting. Bad luck, South Africa. Louis Oosthuizen and Brandon Grace put up a brave fight. Louis finished tied for second, with Brandon Grace tied for fourth place at what was one of the most challenging golf courses in memory, really, at the US Open. But that's where we wrap it on a bit of good news on this Monday morning. Good golf had overnight. A young man won another major, and he's an absolute credit to the sport. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Don't forget, the show repeats on YouTube, and you can also watch it back later on demand, very much same place. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.